Hello, welcome to week 10 of the Odin Project's Ruby on Rails study group. Let's see. What went on this week? Oh, a lot of interesting stuff. I was watching a bunch of Railsconf videos. Railsconf, the Rails conference, happens every year. I don't know how long that's been going on, but this year's was kind of interesting. Watched a bunch of few videos from there. Hi, Marina.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Nice to see you. I was just mentioning that I watched a bunch of Railsconf videos this week, and one of the more interesting ones was this one by the creator of Rails. What's his name again? Let's take a look real quick. David, oh, I'm going to butcher his name. Let's just say David Hansen. So basically he's talking about how test-driven development is being taken too far, that in some ways it's getting in the way of making apps. And it's an interesting little talk. And I also found a follow-up video. This video came out on May 1st, 2014, so just a few days ago when the Railsconf started. And then there's a follow-up video from, I think, either yesterday or the day before, where he's in a Google Hangout with Martin Fowler, and I forgot the other gentleman's name. These are big names in the test-driven development world. And they were just talking about some of the issues that he brought up at the Railsconf, and it's really good. I got to post that one too. I posted this one in the Odin group, his talk, and then I'll add the other video as soon as I get a chance. So Marina, what have you been up to?
Oh, doing well. I don't know what's the agenda for today. I have only looked through the associations and the model active record, but I didn't get to the project.
Okay.
I don't know if it was on the plan.
Okay. Yeah, it's on the plan. So we're not going to do a lot, but let's see how far we get. So if we look at basically, let's go to the curriculum, go to where we're at. Building with active record is basically where we're at. And the first little project, did you do these at all? These 4 little mini ones?
Wait a second, I'm looking. The like active record basics?
Yeah.
No, as I said, I've just read through the theory.
Okay, no problem. These ones are pretty simple, so if you just did some of the reading for active record, I think this should be pretty straightforward. I won't go into depth on those at all. The interesting project this week was micro-edit, and let's see what it's saying. Let's build Reddit, basically a junior version. You'll build the data structures necessary to support links, submissions, and commenting. We won't deal with the front end for it. We're just dealing with the associations. And this, I thought this was really cool because he walks you through how to do this stuff essentially. Rather than leaving it up to you, it's nice to have a walkthrough too. So I did this, and I put up my solution, which is, you know, it's going to be just like everybody else's since it's a walkthrough. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no, I was just going to ask if you did it, but you already answered.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It won't take you long. So I went around and I tried to read up on associations in a bunch of other places, and one interesting thing that I found was an article from Jumpstart Labs. Jumpstart Lab, I always want to pluralize their name, but it's Jumpstart Lab, singular, on associations. And I wanted to just use it to walk through one little thing they had. So let me go, we're going to go to my GitHub account and grab my solution. We're just going to use the micro-edit Reddit.
By the way, there is no screen sharing, it's just a black screen.
Oh, really? That's not good. I thought I was screen sharing. Thank you for letting me know. How's that?
Yeah, it's fine.
Great. Okay, so I grabbed that. Now I'm going to go to my Nitrous account. Okay.
So do you like working with the Nitrous more than on a local machine?
Well, I have a Windows machine. So, and it's not a newer Windows machine, it's a little bit older. So actually I had troubles installing Rails on it.
Oh, okay.
And that was so long ago, so many months ago now, that I don't even remember what my problems were. And since I've been productive on Nitrous, I haven't even tried again. And I'm going to have access to a Mac development machine actually this week. So the only thing I don't like about Nitrous is that it's down once in a while. Like yesterday it was down for a couple of hours. I wanted to get some stuff done and I couldn't. What else don't I like about Nitrous? Nitrous, you know, the environment is virtual in terms of like let's say you're in Rails, you want to do some GUI tests, you want to run Capybara, you can't because there is no browser for the tests to run in. So there's the issue with that. I had another problem where I was trying to install one library that had to be compiled from C, and I couldn't do that because I couldn't super user do, sudo. And other than that, it's really worked well for me. So let's git clone that project I just copied. You can see all this, right? Good. Okay, so we cloned it. We're going to go in there. And let me see, where is my transcript? So in the MicroReddit project, let me start a new text file so I can type this out. Basically, the users table, I said has many posts, and has many comments. None of these should come as a big surprise. Belongs to user, posts belongs to user and has many comments, and comments belongs to user and also belongs to post. So just to give you an idea, if you haven't done the project, for anybody else watching at whatever point, haven't done the project, we're asked to just make some basic associations. So these are what I came up with.
I wonder if it's possible to use, I was just reading, still fresh in my memory, to use the through association, like users can get to comments through posts.
Get to comments through posts. You could.
Just like another way of doing it.
There's another. Yeah, that's another way. It all really comes down to how much. What operations will you be wanting to do? For example, if you do a lot of operations in your application where you're always needing to see, you're always needing to query for who wrote each specific comment, it might be more efficient to have a direct connection from users to comments. And what that belongs to, when I say in comments belongs to user, that makes it so that there's a foreign key in the comments table, and that points right to the user table. Ooh, that didn't work out well.
Do you mean it's more efficient, like in terms of like the execution speed, or just in terms of like code efficiency, or both?
Probably both. I think definitely code efficiency, and you'll see why in a minute. I'm going to talk about something related to that. What am I doing? Is that too big?
That's fine.
It's probably a little too big. So let's get going, and I think I'm going to address your question as we go along. So we have the MicroReddit app and those associations. So let's explore one of the articles that I have in my transcript for this week points to an article by Jumpstart Lab. Let's go find that real quick. And they have one particular page on associations. Let me see, where is that? I think I might have a link to it right here. Right here. We're going to follow this basically. Just so you guys get an idea. This is the page. I'm kind of following this. So first it talks about one-to-one relationships. I think one-to-one relationships are kind of so easy in a way compared to some of the other ones, or seemingly so easy that we skip over them and might not really think too hard about when and why we need them. So I wanted to go through this really quick. The article says one-to-one relationships are best applied when you have an object that has more than one role in the system. Now, what does that mean? Let's say we have our user table, and we have a lot of things besides just name and email, for example. Let's say you can think of birth date, gender, city, state they live in, their social security number, so on. And so some of these fields are a lot more used a lot more often than others. For example, name you'll want to query for all the time, for example, relatively. But let's say it's not too often in your application that you'll actually want to get the social security number of that user. So that's what that means by the definition of when I said one-to-one relationships are best applied when you have an object that has more than one role in the system. The role of the email field is not the same as the role of the social security number field. Not only do they have different roles, essentially they're used in different. Some are used a lot more than others. Let's just leave it at that. So what we're going to do, we're going to take my basic models and tweak them a little bit in this application. I have, in the MicroReddit project, I have the posts, which belongs to user and has many comments. Let's start with the user maybe. User just has a name and email, and it's a really simple validation I gave it. And just have name and email right now. A user has many posts, and a user has many comments. Posts, again, a simple validation, belongs to a user, which means there's going to be a foreign key in the post table pointing back to the user table, and has many comments. And a comment belongs to user and posts. It's fairly simple associations. So what we're going to do, we're going to use and expand the user table and see where we go. First thing I want to do, I've only talked about this gem maybe 6 out of 10 study groups now. So just to reiterate that I kind of like this gem. It's the Annotate Models Gem. And I'm going to add it to the project right now because I like it so much and I think it's kind of useful. So I'm in the gem file. I'm going to add it to the development group because it has no meaning in the production or test environments. And let's bundle install. It's getting the gem. Okay, it's done. So what that gem also did, it made a, actually it didn't, I have to tell it to install now. There's also now a Railsg annotate install to initialize the annotate gem. And this will create a file in libtasks. Let's take a look. Lib tasks, this file right here. So these are a bunch of options for this gem. And just to get a little fancy, we're going to exclude tests because we're not doing any tests here. Fixtures and factories, just to tweak some settings because we can, and just to show you. So now, if we run rakedb migrate, it's a brand new install. So not only will it do what we usually see when we say migrate, the annotate gem will also go into the model files and make little comments in the model files. So whereas before this is what post RB looked like, this is what user looked like, this is what comment looked like, if in this environment I have to actually close the files, go back into the model directory and pull them up again. Here's user. See these comments? The annotate gem added that. Posts and comment. So this is kind of nice because now I don't have to look in schema or schema, depending on how you want to pronounce it, .db for this information. It's right here in comments. And every time you run rakedb migrate, it'll update these comments. And in this one, you don't see, in this, you can see in the post one, it even tells you about that index. So it looks a lot like the schema. Okay, so we ran our migrate. So now what? So let's say now we have our user model. Our user model just has a name and email. And by the way, feel free to stop me if you have any questions. Let me see if anybody else is okay. So let's say we just have name and email right now. Let's say I want to add a bunch of stuff to the user model. Or let's say I want to add a bunch of information to the app in general. I haven't decided where to add it. I want to add birthday for user. I want to add gender for user. I want to add city for user. Maybe some other stuff. The natural tendency is to add them to the user table. That makes sense because each instance of the user class, each row of the users table, will have one associated birthday, gender, and city. And that would be pretty easy, right? We make a migration, we add those fields to the user table and add validations, so on and so forth. There are a few reasons where you might not want to do that, and here's one reason. What if each city also has a bunch of other data that comes along with that city? For example, depending on what city you're in, there's a whole bunch of other columns that maybe the app will need to get to that are city dependent, and then it becomes doesn't make it as much sense, especially for those other columns, to store them in the user table. So that might be a reason to take that stuff out of the user table. Another one that the article from Jumpstart talks about is, let's say, for example, we go into, I'm going to go into the Rails console. Let's go into the Rails console. The Rails console automatically loads up the objects we've created. So if I say user.find, whatever, there's nothing in there actually right now. But if there was, this would pull up all the columns for user number 3. And that's well and fine, but if we have a lot of columns in the table, every time we do something like that, Rails goes out of its way to get all the columns. And if you're doing that a lot, if your app is hitting the database a lot with queries like that, where let's say, most of the time that you're doing that query, and you're doing that query a lot, you're going in there to, let's just get the name of that user or the email of that user and put it in a view to show it to put it in the browser, in a web page. It might not be that efficient. So that's one reason. That's another reason where you might want to pull some of these fields that are less used into another table, and that's what one of the scenarios that this Jumpstart article talks about.
I wonder if it's possible just to, if you're interested in a particular field, can you just extract that particular field as opposed to taking all of them?
Extract it? What do you mean?
Well, like you were saying that if the user has a lot of columns associated with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by calling a user find 3, you would be taking all of these columns, right?
Mm-hmm.
But shouldn't it possible to take only that particular column that you're interested in, such as email or whatever?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what you can do is, you can do user follow. After you do find 3, you can say .email for just that field. But I think when you said find 3, it automatically defaults to getting all the columns. So if there's a way to tell it to just get one column, I don't know about that. I mean, I literally don't know. I don't know if that's. I don't know how to do that. I'm not saying it's not possible.
I guess it's something to learn.
Yeah. But I know if you do just find 3, I guess we can take a look. Let's take a quick look. let's look at Rails querying. I like the Rails edge guides. Let's look at query retrieving a single object, retrieving multiple objects, conditions, ordering, joining, either, blah, blah, blah. So retrieving objects, to retrieve objects, Active Record provides several finder methods. Each finder method allows you to pass arguments, blah, blah, blah. The methods are bind, create, string, find, blah, 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 blah. Includes, join, lock, all these things. The primary operational model.find options can be summarized as convert the supplied options to a SQL query, fire the SQL query, run after, find callbacks if necessary. So here's the simplest example. Using model.find primary key, you can retrieve the object corresponding to the... Okay, here's another issue I just thought of. The ID field is indexed. So it's fairly efficient relatively to find by index. If you just want to find by a column, a random column name matching a value, it's not going to be as efficient. I guess if you index that column, you know that you're going to be using that column a lot. I guess if you then create an index, then that makes it easier. Otherwise, if it's not indexed, I know it's not going to be efficient.
Right.
Let's see if we see anything else that triggers any information. Client first, last, find by. Okay, here's a conditional matching some condition that I guess we can pop any column name in there, equivalent to writing that. Find by bang. Okay, this one raises the exception if it needs to. Retrieving multiple objects. Here's an array, getting a whole array of stuff. Yeah, I'm still not convinced that that's all there is to the story, but I think definitely indexing has a big weight for the answer to your question. So back to back to this. So let's what was I saying? So you're trying to pull a lot of information in the user table, or let's say you just want the user table access to a lot of individual information, and we're talking about what cases would it be best to not put it in the user table directly. Let's talk about a solution that Jumpstart Lab article put forward. You put the details for that user in a new table, and you create a one-to-one relationship between the user and those details. For example, we can make a detail class and the associated details table with that less frequent information. Let's just choose birthday, gender, and city. And let's make that. So if I pop out to the command line, let's go here. Let's say Rails, generate a new model. Let's call it detail. And detail will have birthday string. I'm not going to get complicated in terms of validations or really, you know, something that really is appropriate to a birthday. Well, we'll just stick with strings for this example. And then let's say I want those three things, birthday, gender, and city, and then we want to have a reference back to the user table. So I make user of the references type.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be our foreign key in the details table, going back to the user table. So let's generate that. That creates our migration. Okay, and we can might as well migrate it. And I'm going to close these because I want to reopen them since I remigrated. So, well, comment hasn't changed, but we can close that. We can close that. Okay, let's go back to user. Now we can say has many posts, has many comments. User also has one detail. And then in the our brand new spanky new detail, you can see the detail table now. We just created this. It automatically gave it an ID. We wanted birthday, we wanted gender, we wanted city. We added a references to the user table, and these two are always added to tables. And we indexed, when we said references, the migration knew that we wanted an index on that. And it already added our belongs to user in here. So in that case, we're good to go. So now to play with this, it'd be good to add some data in there. There's different ways to add data, right? We can go into console and do it, but I'm going to use the seeds utility. I'm going to seed the database, and I have some data I made up. Did I put it in the file? It would suck if I hadn't. There it is. Good. Less typing is better. Let's just seed this data. Okay, so I made 4 users, and for each one, I'm grabbing the name and an email, and they go in the user table. Then the rest of the stuff in here goes in the detail table. So I'm going to say rake dbc, and just like magic, we should have stuff in the database now. So if we go to the Rails console now, we should be able to do user.all, and there's nothing. What happened? What's going on? Nothing, huh? Did I not save that? Oh wait, I didn't save this file. That's always a problem. You gotta save the file. I had done the migration, yeah. When you add, like I added this has one here, you don't need to do a migration for it to catch that.
Because I am, well, I don't know if I should ask it now or later.
Go ahead.
I guess that relates to, the question relates to updating the database. When I was reading up all these materials today, I got an impression that it's not okay to edit it directly, that you should create a migration for each change that you want to invoke on the database. So like in this case, like adding a detail association.
Yeah, from what I understand, it's not as, it's more error prone to go in schema RB and add it here. Which you could do, but if you go and add it here, that's not as fail-safe as creating a migration. Now, this has one detail, doesn't actually create anything in schema RB. So if we look at the user table, let's rake db migrate just in case, if there's anything left to be done. I'm going to close this in case that gets changed. I think all it did was annotate right now. I don't think it changed schema RB at all. If we come in here, this is the comments table, details table. So let's say user. See, there's nothing in user that points to detail. The foreign key resides in detail.
Okay.
So us coming and adding this manually didn't affect this. it wasn't a problem. And if you remember, when I did, was that in this console or this console or this console? When I did the Rails generate model, I said user references. It was smart enough to know that I wanted an index here. It added this line for my index, basically. Or this is what it translates to, is in the schema, the index I added to, this is what it looks like.
Okay.
So I think this is safe, what we did. Could be wrong, but I doubt it. We'll see. So what did we do now? We added some users. We
to check if users are in the database now.
Check if users are in the database now. Oh yeah, I went in the console and I saw there was nothing there and I freaked out. Let's go in here. Oops. So, okay. So now seeding the database worked. I'm saying show me everything in the user table. We see user ID 1, user ID 2, 3, 4, and I believe that's all I created. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And if I do detail.all, we see all the details I created. Now we can do, since we hooked up the two tables, we can do, well, we know we can do stuff like this. User.find the third user. That just shows our user field, but our user table. But we can also do user.find that third one, its associated detail table, and their birthday. But I have to spell birthday right. And the birthday is 8/11/12. What else can I do? I can do it directly. I can say user.find 3.detail to get them all the details. Birthday, gender, city for user ID 3.
So I guess the previous question was, like, say in this case you have user has only the most necessary data, right? And then detail table has birthday and whatnot. And the previous question was, when user has had all the data, if it's possible to call something like user.find 3.birthday.
Yeah, I think it is, but it's just not. It's more efficient first if that column is indexed. So if birthday was indexed, then that's definitely a step in the right direction. And I do think it's possible.
Right, I'm just checking on technicalities.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. But I think it really, when you want to do this, split it up into different tables, is dependent on your application and how often you'll be looking up birthday compared to just looking up name and email.
Right.
Like if name and email is really common, it's good to keep the user table with those few columns so that bang, it doesn't have to ever deal with grabbing city and all that. And let me see, if let's just say you had user, email, and birthday in the users table, and you wanted to look it up by birthday, and birthday had an index, I think that would be just as efficient as if you looked it up by ID, because first of all, we're saying you index the birthday column. So you would choose that method if for whatever reason birthdays had to be gotten to really quick, kind of like name and email, or they were being gotten to often. And you wouldn't do it that way if getting birthdays was very inoften compared to those other fields in the user table. That's what I'm thinking. So where were we? So we saw that we can do a bunch of these queries. Can we do detail dot first user. We can do that. So detail.first is the first entry in the detail table, and then .user is the user associated with that. So we see in this case it's with the Johnny is the first user. Now, what if we wanted a new detail created for every new user created? There's certain callbacks that you can do where you can say, we'll use this one called after initialize. If we go to our user model, we can say, first of all, let me tell you about callbacks. Callbacks are methods that get called at certain moments of an object's life cycle. With callbacks, it's possible to write code that will run whenever an active record object is created, saved, updated, deleted, validated, or loaded from the database. So in this case, let's say after we initialize a new user, we want to create the associated details object. So the after initialize callback will be called whenever an active record object is instantiated, either by directly using new or when a record is loaded from the database. So let's say we're in our user model. We are in our user model, and we can say after detail, we can say after initialize, do this stuff. After initialize, build detail if, oops, build self. What's going on? Why do I keep jumping up there? Build I must be hitting the pad here. Build detail if detail.no. You can add that in there. Save that, and then in the console we have to reload the class. Let's try this. User.create name Bruce Wayne. Email bat@mail.com. So I'm not going to give the detail information. Let's see what happens. So we added this after initialize. What did it do? Select one email. So inserted into users the information I gave, name and email. Then it tried to insert into details. What did it insert into detail? I don't think it inserted anything into detail.
What are those question marks? Maybe.
In the SQL statement?
Yes.
So these four correspond to, it looks like, the four.
Okay, so they don't indicate that the missing data.
That's a good question, though. I'm not clear on the syntax of why those question marks are there, though. So maybe there's substitutions for, they're like parameters, and these are the parameters. That's parameter list, and these are the actual parameters, because we have created at, email, name, and updated at 4, corresponding to these 4, corresponding to these 4. But then it went into details. So it knew that the stuff that's automatic, user ID updated and created at, it filled those out. But if we do hello, no, we do say detailed dot last. It's got nils for birthday, gender, and city, even though the user ID. So we haven't finished implementing it yet, even though we added some smarts. We didn't specify the values for the detail. which makes sense because I didn't. I just said this stuff, just the name and the email. But it still went ahead and made a initialize. So we have to add validations and stuff. A little more on this a little later. Now here's something, I'm not sure if this relates to what you asked earlier, but here's another issue. Reaching through the user object to get to the details object is actually not really good practice. Doing stuff like, what did we do here? Reaching from the user object into the detail. Like this. This is not really considered great practice. And this is referred to, basically from the outside, we shouldn't even know about detail object because it's really an implementation detail.
Mm-hmm.
This is referred to, this issue comes up in the Ruby and Rails world as the law of Demeter. Demeter, who knows? It's a language none of us speak. It's Greek. Some of us maybe speak it. I don't speak it. Demeter, right there. Law of Demeter. And basically the law of Demeter is a series of guidelines to follow in object-oriented programming which leads to loose coupling, encapsulation, and all that good stuff that we're trying to accomplish with using object-oriented methodology at all. These are all desirable traits. Reaching through user to get to the details violates this law. Mm-hmm. And in my transcript, I give you a link to a good article that talks about just that in the context of Rails.
Cool.
So to hide the details of detail, of the detail object, we can use the delegate method. So let's say we go into the user and has one detail. We can do that and then delegate. Oops. Let's go and add delegate birthday, gender, city to detail. What happened there? Delegate birthday, gender, city to detail. Okay. So now a call to, let's say, user find. Let's say a call to user find 3 city. This will now proxy the call to the associated detail object. It'll fetch it from the database if it hasn't already been loaded, and return us the value from the detail objects method. Another thing that we might want to add is we have has one detail. We can make it dependent destroy. So if we didn't have this dependent destroy, every time it's possible that when we destroy a user entry, a user object from the user's table, that we have orphaned details. This makes it so that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
They depend on that. So there's still this. The article goes on, talks a little more about this stuff, and it talks about some other relationships, one-to-many, and some other stuff. But I thought this by itself, while this one has one-to-one relationship, even though it was pretty simple, it brought up a lot of these different issues. So it was kind of fun to go through. And for that, that's pretty much all I have. The article has more on it, and you can go through my transcript to get to that. Basically, so the micro-Reddit project, all it was creating those relationships. We did a bunch more right then. And then we're basically finished. Where are we in here? We just finished this database and active record section. So next week we're going to go through these forms. I haven't looked at these two projects, but right now my goal is to talk about these two projects, forms and authentication, next week. And if for some reason these turn out really simple, I'll plow deeper and go into advanced forms and active record. I want to hammer on associations a lot. Because you know, the simpler associations are not too hard, but it can get complicated.
Yeah.
So if you have questions, you can mail them to me or whatever, or stuff you want to cover. I would love to hear your input on it, or anybody else listening at whatever point, and we'll try to cover that. After that, we have APIs, mailers, advanced stuff, and coming up to the final project. So we're coming along here. So for now, that is this week's session of the Odin Project's Ruby on Rails study group.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you, guys. See you next week. Take a look at that video from David Hansen. It's good stuff. And I will also post the talk he had the other day with Martin Fowler and company. Good stuff, and see you next week.